Welcome back to 3 Plus U. With fall officially here, it certainly feels like it. Most of us are referring to it as being great football weather, and that's what we want. But for high school parents whose sons are playing football, now with COVID season, it's been an exceptionally stressful re-entry into the game. Bryan Clary is the lead physical therapist at Center for Sports Medicine, and he joins us this morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Julie. Thanks for having me.
I might hip hop us around this conversation because the truth is there are lots of things that we can kind of start with, Bryan. All of them are going to be very interesting to people who either are dealing with COVID or have a child who is.
Right.
But, before school really even started, the news came out that kids at Macaulay, I'll just say it, the football team, a lot of them got COVID. The worry, besides their health being okay, is how do you get them back into the game? And I guess that's where you kind of stepped in to help, right?
Right. So as early as late April, early May, we started meeting with sports programs and school systems and just trying to help them figure out if there is going to be a return for potential fall sports, what would that look like? And we gave presentations. Center for Sports Medicine gave presentations on just what other people in the world were doing. Some of the first people to come back were some of the soccer leagues in Europe. The U.S. Olympic Committee put out a pretty big article about how you return, but it was very strict early on, and it is a very contagious and a high rate of transmission disease, as everybody knows. And so it's not surprising that there are going to be periods of time where teams have to step back and take a break, and hopefully most of it's precaution, but when they return to that, there are certain return to sport, there are certain rules and regulations that are kind of in place, just objectively, for how you would return.
So I told you before we began the interview, the folks watching probably by now have figured it out, that our whole family got COVID in mid-August, and we've been good to go for a while now. But my husband and I on a regular basis will talk about how you still kind of feel these residual effects of it. I have some other friends who've had it. They're saying the same thing. I know we talk about teenagers usually being asymptomatic, but for the kids that are getting it, are you having to take extra care as a physical therapist about either their muscle conditioning or their lung capability? Are you seeing concerns there?
COVID is primarily a respiratory illness, but there are a multitude of other symptoms that can occur: cardiovascular and gastrointestinal and musculoskeletal. And really, from a physical therapist standpoint, when they come in, it's a pretty controlled environment. But you do have to be careful there. Where we're seeing most is in our sports med outreach. And so you've got, high school athletes, you've got professional athletes that are trying to make a return. And the question is, how do they do that? So, it's pretty, if you have had what the most recent objective measurements would be, is if you have had COVID, you've had a COVID diagnosis, you don't need to even think about returning to sport for 14 days. From that date of diagnosis. And then furthermore, you don't need to even think about returning till you have no symptoms, and you need to be 7 days with no symptoms before you return. Probably the best bet is for you to have a medical clearance from your general physician. If you have had any cardio respiratory issues, you need to have a clearance from that as well. But if you had to remember some numbers: 14 days from diagnosis, 7 days with no symptoms, and you don't try to return until you have had no symptoms at all.
One thing that does seem to linger is the fatigue. You just have every day you begin to feel a little bit more like yourself. For our family, that day 14 was kind of a magic turning point where we stepped up our game. But even still, it just feels like you can tire a little bit more easily. I would think for kids on the field, you've got to learn how to gradually get yourself back in and not push it too fast.
Right. Your level of deconditioning is probably as bad or worse than it's ever been within any illness, likely worse. And then you throw that into, you've got a helmet on, you've got shoulder pads on, heat index is near 100, you've got a mouthpiece in, and there's a lot of things that are working against you, at least in football. And especially like like girls soccer is back right now. What's more intense than that in terms of running? And so slow progression is what you need. And
What
anything
about
weird is likely weird and need to have it checked out.
what about the Saturday clinics that y'all were always so famous for, Brian? Are you having those again this season?
We are still having Saturday clinics. It's been such a benefit to the community for us to be able to offer that. It's a little different this year because the Georgia schools started 2 weeks later. So what that means for the public is that in our Macaulay clinic, the Saturday clinic is going to go a little longer. So Macaulay Avenue Clinic, right beside the hospital, is going to go to November 21st. And then in Cleveland, we're going to go to November 7th.
Okay, and are those, forgive me for asking perhaps an ignorant question, but are those scheduled appointments? Are they drop-ins? How do you handle the clinic?
It is anyone. You do not have to have a referral. You do not have to have an appointment. Anyone that's been, potentially injured through the week. It's primarily aimed at the younger athletic population with timelines.
Okay,
Anyone that's been injured through the week, that's what it's for. So you can come in Saturday, you get your imaging Saturday, you get to see a physician Saturday. If you need any medical equipment, crutches, knee immobilizer, boots, you get it that day. And most importantly, if you need further imaging, such as an MRI, it's set up that day, and possibly you have a follow-up midweek, and then you get a decision of whether you can be back on Friday or not.
before I let you run to the overall population watching, it is frightening. I think the COVID numbers seem to fluctuate and sometimes they go up, and nobody wants to get this. If, though, you are needing physical therapy, it's really important that you don't put that off.
Correct. Right. We're the to come into our facility is through a screening process. We're going through pretty much the same situation you have been in, probably anywhere you've entered medical facility, but we're doing our best to make sure that you are safe and we're in a clean environment and clinic. And yeah, it's important now as it would be in any year to make sure that you are taking care of your health.
All right. Well, you take care of yours, Brian, and thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Julie.
Again, the Saturday clinic's happening in Chattanooga through November 21st at the Macaulay Avenue location in Cleveland. They're going through November 7th, and you can always learn more by going to the Center for Sports Medicine website that you see there on your screen. We're back with more right after this.